So the pasuk says, chapter 27, verse 1, it was that Yitzchak grew old, Vatechahena inav mir'os, his eyes grew dim from seeing. Vayikras Esav b'no Gadol, he called to Esav, his elder son, and he said to him, my son, Vayomer lav b'ni, Vayomer lav hineni. He said, here I am. I want to start with this idea that Yitzchak grew old. Vayiki zaken Yitzchak. Yitzchak grew old. So I have some beautiful midrashim here, and there's a very powerful midrash that I like to discuss with people. The midrash tells us, Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon, Avram tava zikna. Nobody was old until Abraham requested it. Abraham requested old age. Abraham requested the idea that you look old. So if anybody wants to blame anybody, blame Abraham. When our features look older, we could blame Abraham. Why would he want that? Why would Abraham want old? Why would it? What? So exactly. The midrash says, Amar lefanav ribono olamim. He said, Master of the universe. He said before God, Master of the universe. Adam ubno nichnas lamakom ve'ein adam yodeh mi mechabed. A man and his son enter into a place. Nobody knows who to show honor to. Because if you don't have one with gray hair or balding, they look exactly the same. So you don't know what to do. Now, Abraham. Now the problem is, if you show disrespect to an older person, that's a biblical violation. So he didn't. So mitoch shata matro beziknei adam yodel mimechabed. But because you crown the father with the physical signs of old age, a man will know whom to honor. So first of all, we see from here that the physical signs of old age are called a crown. Crown. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Chayacha dvar tov tavata umimcha umnatzkio. Hashem said, I swear to you, you really requested something good. This idea of old age. And we're going to start from you. You're going to be the first one to grow old, to have signs of old age. From the beginning of Genesis until Abraham, it never says the word old. Avram nasan lo zikna. Once Abraham grew old, once Abraham stood up, God gave him old age. As it says, Avram ki zaken ba bayamim. Abraham was old and well in years. Okay, so first of all, Abraham was the first one to get the signs of old age, and that was a blessing. It was a crown. But Yitzchak, what was he the first to do? Says the Midrash, Yitzchak was the first to ask for what? Anyone? Yitzchak was the first. Yitzchak tava Yisurin. Yitzchak requested afflictions. Yitzchak was the first one to request afflictions. Amar Lefanav, Ribono Olamim. He said before, Master of the universe, Adam mate below Yisurim. A man shall die without any afflictions. Midat hadin mutucha connected. Why would Yitzchak request afflictions in this world? Why? Why do you think he would request afflictions? Says the Midrash that Yitzchak said, If a man dies without any afflictions, midat hadin mitucha kenegdo, the attribute of justice is stretched against him following his death. Yitzchak was worried he would die and he would have had no defense against the attribute of justice. The attribute of justice would say, we gave you everything in this world. So therefore, mitoch shavatam mevi'alav yisurim ein atam midat hadin mitucha kenegdo, because God brought afflictions on Isaac that had the effect of purging his sins, so to speak. And the attribute of justice wasn't able to say anything. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so God said to him, Chayecha devar tov tavata mimcha ani matchil. God says to Isaac, I swear, you asked for a good thing, and we're going to start from you. Until Isaac in the entire Torah, nobody requested. We don't see at all any reference to afflictions. Once Isaac stood up, God gave him afflictions. As it states, when Isaac's eyes grew dim. So it would seem that from our midrash, if Isaac had not requested afflictions, then there would be no afflictions in this world. Nobody would have any physical afflictions. But Isaac requested them, so God afflicted him with blindness. But Rav Tzadok HaKohen suggests that Isaac's affliction was connected to the idea that he was the first to be circumcised. And he understood that through the physical challenges, we could come closer to Hashem. That's perhaps why it was Isaac who was the first. There's a story about this that there was a great tzaddik, Reb Simcha Zissel Ziv. He was a great tzaddik, Reb Simcha Zissel. And he was sent a letter by the Alter of Kelm, the great Hasidic master of Kelm. Excuse me, I made a mistake there. The Alter of Kelm, Reb Simcha Zissel, sent a letter to a person who was undergoing suffering. And the Alter of Kelm wrote that when he read this midrash, he himself became suffused with joy, as though he had found the great treasure. He said, if our great patriarch Isaac, who literally offered his life as a sacrifice to God, feared that the divine attribute of justice would be stretched out against him if he did not suffer afflictions, then how much thankful must we be when God offers us the opportunity? That's what Rav Simcha Zissel of Kelm said. If Isaac, who underwent the circumcision for the first time, felt he needed afflictions, how much more so should we? Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler is from right near Wendy. Gates said, Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler said, I don't know if you ever were there, Wendy, but Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler suggests that Yitzchak didn't want all of us to suffer affliction. He wanted those who were truly tzaddikim to suffer affliction. Because the true tzaddik, when he gets to that level, needs to go even higher. And he can only get even higher with affliction, meaning to say, kind of like if you're working out, going through the exercises, the greater you are, the harder the exercise has to be. And that's the example with the tzaddik. So, okay, let me just pause here. Anybody have any comments on this? Yes, either Bruce or April, somebody is. Hold on. Let me just pause. I did this yesterday in our Rashi study, but it's such a beautiful Rashi that I wanted to record it again. Rashi gives, and then we could see what the Midrash says here. Rashi says, why did his eyes grow dim? Rashi gives three explanations. The first explanation is that his eyes grew dim from the smoke of the wives of Esav. Esav married Hittite women, and they were worshiping idolatry, and from their smoke, the eyes of Esav became blinded. A parent can't look at their son when their son or their daughter disappoints them in the path they take. And so therefore Isaac's eyes grew dim. A second approach, this is actually the third approach Rashi takes, is that this was a necessary plot, a detail for the plot, because how else would we understand why Isaac didn't notice that it was Jacob bringing him the game? So we have to explain it's a necessary function for the plot that Isaac was blind. But the third approach, hold on, let me get my jacket. The third approach is perhaps
the angels wept at the Akedah.
That's what I was about to say. Let me read it by what Rashi says, because I find this to be the most moving. In the third approach, it says, when Isaac was bound on the altar, and his father wanted to slaughter him, at that moment, the heavens opened up, and the angels saw him, and they were crying, and their tears descended, and they fell on his eyes. Therefore, his eyes grew dim. Meaning to say that Isaac's eyes grew blind from the tears of the angels dripping into his eyes when they saw him almost sacrificed. And I was wondering about this, like, angels aren't supposed to cry. They're not supposed to cry at all. And how can we imagine what's the significance of the fact that an angel's tears entered into Isaac's eyes? What's the significance of that moment? So, to me, the significance is that Isaac was deeply bothered by the trauma of the Akedah. Isaac is an angel. He never does anything wrong. He's like he's an angel, and it's as though the trauma affected him to such a degree that he was never able to see again, or he became blind as a result of it. So that's the powerful idea that I saw in that midrash. Okay, so now I'm going to say some more midrashim about this idea of Isaac's eyes becoming dim. Isaac's eyes becoming dim. Of course, we know that in literature in general, blindness is a sign not just of physically being unable to see, but spiritually, that you're unable to see. Clearly, that's another answer that Yitzchak really wasn't properly able to see the true nature of Esav. So let's look at what the Midrash says here. And what was when Isaac's eyes had become dim, the Midrash says, Rabbi Yitzchak patach. Rabbi Yitzchak opened up his commentary here by citing a verse from Isaiah chapter 5, verse 23. Matzdike Rasha Akev Shochad. They acquit the wicked one because of a bribe. Whoever takes a bribe and makes the wicked one righteous, in the end, he will experience the idea of the second part of the verse, which means the righteousness of the tzaddikim will be removed from him. What does that mean? That's a reference to Moses. So now what we're saying is that it's a punishment, that because Yitzchak favored Esav, as a result of this, his eyes went blind. That's why his eyes are going blind, because he picked the wrong side. He went on the wrong team, as Joe Biden says, the other team. So, unlike Moshe Rabbeinu, I just wrote this morning in the Torah that I finished. It says about Moshe, Lo chataino. Yitzchak, his eyes became weak. It says Vatechahena. But about Moshe, it says Lo chataino. Moshe's eyes did not become weak. So Moses his eyes never become diminished. But Isaac, because he chose the wrong son, therefore his eyes grew dim as a result of this seeing. So I guess if we take that approach, it's showing us a very, very big flaw in Isaac. He wasn't able to see properly, not just physically, but he couldn't see the truth of his own children, which is unfortunately a very, very common mistake. Okay, next passage here in the Midrash states, Matzdike Rasha, but now we say, Matzdike Rasha Marshia Tzaddik, one who makes a wicked one righteous, and the righteous one wicked, to Avat Hashem Gam Shem. It's an abomination to do both of these things. Say about somebody who is righteous that they're wicked, and say about somebody who's wicked that they're righteous. Actually, this is an abomination. So it says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Lomi Ma'ashai to Rivko Hever says Yaakov Yaser mi Esav Asta to Devarasah. They want to know, the Midrash is bothered by, why is it that Rebecca favored Jacob? Why did she do this? Why did she do this action of deceiving her husband? She seemed to have had a beautiful relationship with her husband. Why all of a sudden is she deceiving him? Isaac is the only one of the patriarchs Rebecca is the only one of the matriarchs who Isaac only had one wife. Isaac did not take concubines, did not take other wives. Isaac is the only one. Rebecca is the only one of the matriarchs who doesn't fight with her husband. She never fights with him directly. Sarah has a tremendous fight. She says, Yishpod Hashem beini ubeincha. Rachel screams at her husband, and her husband says, what do you think I am, God? Leah is the scorned one. The Torah calls her the snuah, the hated one. The only one of the matriarchs and the patriarchs who seem to have had a normal relationship, so quote unquote normal relationship, are Rebecca and Isaac. So we might have thought, how could Rebecca have done this? How could she have deceived him? Or must have been that she deceived him because she loved Jacob more than him, more than Esau. She must have just loved Jacob so much that she was willing to do this. But says the Midrash, that's not the case. She didn't act this way because she favored her son. No. Lo mimasha haita Rivka ohevet et Yaakov yater mi Esav asa tedavar zeh. She didn't do this because she favored her son. Why did she do this? El amra lo ye'ol v'yiti lahu saba. Rather, she said, I don't want Esav to deceive Isaac. Here too, we have to go back to Rashi. Rashi had interpreted Isaac's instructions to Esav, that Isaac said to Esav, I need you to get the food that's not stolen and is slaughtered properly. And Rebecca was worried because she knew the true nature of Esav. She was worried he was going to not follow the kosher dietary laws and provide it for him in a non-kosher manner. So therefore, that's why she deceived him. It had nothing to do with the fact that she loved Yaakov more. I don't want him to be deceived. Al Shem Toavat Hashem Gam Shnehem. Because we say both are abominations of Hashem. Meaning to say, if she was worried as follows, and this is why the Midrash is connecting it to this verse. If Esav had indeed convinced Yitzchak that he had prepared the meat properly, Isaac would have been in violation of this verse, which says that you're not allowed to pervert justice by making the wicked one appear to be righteous. And so therefore, in order to prevent Isaac from falling into that spiritual trap, she prepares Jacob to get the blessings so Isaac doesn't fall into the trap of eating non-kosher. As it states, Vayihi ki zaken Yitzchak, when Yitzchak grew old. So that's what this Midrash is teaching us. We see from here the extent we have to go to help somebody from sinning. Rivka, who loved Esav so much, loved Yitzchak so much, was willing to place her whole marriage in jeopardy as a result of this. Ironically, we're never told that Isaac is upset at Rebecca for doing this. In fact, they work together at the end of the story. We never told that. We don't even know that Isaac is aware that Rebecca put Jacob up to this test. Anybody? First of all, let me pause for a moment. Anybody have any questions about this?